Hey booktubers, Lisa here. Today we're talking about this book, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is the author's debut fiction novel. It brings up so many different issues, and I wanted to touch on a few of those with you here in this video, as well as I wanted to talk about, there was another booktuber who came to a completely different conclusion about this book, and I wanted to address some of those comments in this video with the utmost respect. So let's dive in. This book touches on so many deep topics. I'll touch on just a few of those here. The first one being fear. In the book, Kaya talks about this fear that she has. She develops a relationship with a young man by the name of Chase Andrews, who after their relationship ends, he comes back and attacks her, assaults her. She is nervous that he's going to return and hurt her back. This was very relatable, and I think it brings up a good topic point or discussion of fear, especially as women fear men. This book is centered in the 1960s. However, not much has changed since that time. As a woman growing up in the US, I was taught to fear men from a young age. People have actually directly said it, as well as that general feeling of you should always be looking over your shoulder. You should be taking a self-defense class, which when I was at university, there were only females in the self-defense class. And you are always taught not to go out late at night. You're never supposed to travel alone. When you hear a cat call, if a man gives you the whistle or hey baby, especially if you don't know who it is, you are always fearful. Is this person going to come back around? And that fear is especially heightened if you don't know who this person is, because then it's everybody you're looking around. Was it that guy? Was it that guy? Was it that guy? Am I safe walking around the block at night because this guy could be, after me? I don't know. I don't know who this person is. So I thought that that was a good discussion point, that the fear that women have, I know, I'm going to preface that by saying I know 99.9% of men would never harm a woman, but that 0.01% you're taught as a young woman, and you're taught from a young age you should fear men. So if you're a man and you think, oh, I'm just catcalling somebody, this is harmless, the receiver may not. I can't speak for all women, but women have been trained to fear men, and that in a lot of women will be a trigger to be fearful of, are you going to come back around and do something that I don't want at a later point in time. The women on the jury, they do not convict Kaya. There were a variety of different reasons. The book did not necessarily spell out the exact reason why they didn't convict her. They probably did feel a mixture of she may not be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecutor didn't fully do his job. There is the sense that the jury might have felt a little bit guilty for judging her a number of years. But there was probably at least one woman on the jury who felt, I've been there, I've been in fear of men and not knowing if they're going to come back and commit some violence against me, if they're going to come back and get me. Kaya was out alone, defenseless, without anybody to protect her. She took matters into her own hands, and I am very sympathetic. The second big issue that this author tackled was the issue of love. In this book, we have Tate, who is of the marsh, who is very much like Kaya and absolutely loves Kaya as she is and doesn't try to change her. However, he's not perfect, and I think that is something that the author is really a trailblazer and someone who decided to go down the route less traveled, because she wrote Tate not as a perfect character, not as love is perfect, love will be everything and conquer everything. He did have to go away to school. Usually in these small towns you can't make a living very easily. He leaves. He's the one who comes up with the idea for the book that Kaya could be published. That's how she is able to get away from absolute poverty, is through this idea that Tate came up with. But beyond that, He promises her, I will be here on the 4th of July. And he doesn't show up. He ghosts her. And even beyond that, he could have called his dad and said, hey, I told Kaya that I was going to be there the 4th of July. I got called away and I couldn't do it. Please ride out there and let her know so that she's not waiting for me. He could have kept it going, but he didn't. He didn't. And I thought that was really powerful, that we have the main character being deeply, deeply hurt by Tate, but that really was his soulmate, and the power of forgiveness, and that love is not perfect, and that there are bumps in the road. I also like how you can look at the people like the church, the truant officers, people who were supposed to help Kaya but really didn't. And then we have Jumpin, who he was just sitting at his dock gas station when she pulls up, tries to sell some mussels, and he is really her lifeline. He loves her like his own daughter, but loves her as she is. He doesn't try to change her, but tries to help her in the ways that he can. So both Tate and Jumpin, they were really welcome characters that had a lot more depth to them than just a normal average character, average writers. It was really astounding that this is the author's debut fiction novel, because her characters had such a depth to them that I really appreciated them. The third topic that I'm going to touch on in this video is the classism. We have Kaya and her family who are growing up absolutely impoverished, and I felt really sympathetic to Kaya. There is this mentality that the poor are just lazy. However, we see Kaya every day. She gets up early, she collects all these mussels, she drives down to Jumpin as fast as she can to be the first one to sell the mussels before the quota is met for the day. She is the opposite of lazy. She gets up probably earlier than anybody so that she can go out there and collect the mussels to drive them out there. She is very ambitious. However, there were a number of things that Kaya was actually incredibly lucky that many of the underprivileged do not have. One, her house was fully paid for. Nobody was asking for rent money, nobody was asking for mortgage, nobody even asked for the taxes. It was only until she went to go get the deed that they said, oh yeah, I guess you owe all these back taxes. To which she was just able to pull it out of her backpack and hand it over. But it would have been a completely different scenario if she was just trying to eke out a living and then someone said, oh, and on top of all that, I would like a mortgage payment, or I would like rent. She also had a fully paid transportation. She had her little boat. She did not have a car, so she didn't have car insurance. She didn't have car payment. She didn't have student loan payment. She didn't have health insurance. She didn't have the things that many of the poor nowadays are shouldering as well. In addition, she was incredibly lucky because she had a really great team of people around her, and she had opportunities. In a lot of small towns, they don't have a lot of jobs available. She was incredibly lucky. The day that she needed food, she went to Jumpin. Oh, can I sell you some mussels? Sure. And then she sold them to him, and over and over and over, she had a job. She didn't spend months and months and months and months and months looking for a job. So it really opens up that dialogue about classism and what it means to be poor and what it is like to be poor in America. After reading this book, which by the way, I loved, I went online and I saw another booktuber and he slammed this book so hard. I really enjoyed it, and contrary to most people, I really like hearing people who have completely different opinions from me, because then I can get their take. Two things though he said I did not agree with. One, he said he did not believe that the alcoholic father could have these periods of kindness. I really disagreed with that, especially because when people who have a drinking problem sober up, it's generally called the honeymoon period. And that's where they remember, oh wow, I did these really horrible things. I let people down. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm sober. I'm going to make it up to you. They are kind for a period of time until they then fall off the wagon and the cycle repeats itself. So I thought that part was really realistic. The second piece, he said, oh, I don't think that Kaya could have been judged as much as she was in the book. I disagree. And in fact, especially in today's society, I think she would have been judged even more because we have the internet. And people, they hide behind a computer screen and they'll say anything because they're hiding behind the computer screen, or they think they're anonymous and they have a screen name, nobody will know. And they feel very emboldened. They say things they would never say to your face. I remember this story was so moving to me, and it felt so realistic because I grew up in a very small town. It's actually a village of 2,000 people or less, second generation. Many of the people in the village, they either knew who I was or they knew who my family was because, like I said, we were second generation. I also grew up extremely impoverished, and I have a very interesting family dynamic. Out of the 5 children, I was the only one that did not run away before high school graduation. And was I judged? Absolutely, you bet. Everything they said in the book and more. Even at church. I remember there was this group of church girls, and I went to the same church for years. They knew who I was. I wanted to be invited to one of the sleepovers so badly. One day I remember hearing the phone ring and my heart stopped because on the other end of the line was the girl from church. And I thought, this is my before and my after moment. This is my moment. My life is going to be forever changed from this point onward. So I answered the phone. I'm thinking, I'm going to get ready. I'm going to go to this sleepover. It's going to be awesome. And I remember being on the phone, and I heard the lead church girl's voice. And she wasn't inviting me to a sleepover. She said, I started selling products in a pyramid scheme, and I'm out to recruit extra people to sell these home products too. Would you like to join? Very politely, I explained, I only have maybe $15 to my name. I would be more than happy to buy some paper towels. I'll, give you what I can. Just anything to try to form a friendship and be included in the group. Oh, no, that doesn't sound like it's going to work. But I can do it. No, bye. I gotta go. Something is coming up. Bye. And click, oh no. And at the end of it, my mouth opened. Still, I look back at that and I got rejected from a pyramid scheme. That is how much I was judged and how much of an outcast I was growing up in this small town and small community. So I absolutely believe everything in the book except for the ending. And that is why I went through this whole book and I loved it. This could have been my story, in all honesty. It could have been my story. So many things were very similar. Growing up, I was definitely reaching for relationships, any relationship, because my family, like I said, I grew up impoverished. Before I even graduated high school, my family decided to move away, leaving me behind. And I was flailing alone, isolated. Everybody who I went to school with was graduating and leaving. Everybody in my life was leaving, and I was desperate to cling to a relationship, good or bad. I needed anything because I was drowning in the sea. So this very was my story in many, many ways. I wanted to give it 5 stars all the way through until I got to the last 3 pages, and then I hated it. For me, I just block out the ending because I cannot and do not want to think of that as the ending and refuse to think of that as the ending. So I'll write the author's ending. Kaya ends up, she gets to be in her early 60s. She dies out on the marsh, which is kind of a happy ending for her. Tate and Kaya wanted a family. They were never able to have children, which I thought was actually great and also added again another layer of realism to the book, that it felt realistic. So that part I was fine with. They had the funeral, but at the very end, Tate finds this trap door and there are a bunch of poems that Kaya ghost wrote, but there's this necklace that Chase Andrews wore, proving that she was in fact the killer. It did not make sense. It did not make sense for her to be the killer because there is going to be lots of men that are going to say things to her. She's living alone, isolated in the marsh for years and years and years and years. You don't think that there was one person, one guy that came to her place looking for trouble? Absolutely not. there were definitely people who showed up. The fact that there wasn't one boater who boated past her that did a cat call and that she had a fear, oh, is this guy gonna come back and get me? Is this person gonna come back to my house? That definitely happened. If we were talking about if it was a real book, not a fiction book, that definitely would have happened. So do I think that Kaya would have killed Chase Andrews for that? No, I don't think so. They also said the timing didn't make sense. The bus was late. If the bus was late, how could she call this guy on the phone? Plus, I think they saw Kaya's boat going, and I thought that's probably Tate. They also talked about the red hat was passed between the two of them, and it ended up with Tate. Tate was the last person to have it in the book, and they said the hairs or the fibers from the hat were the fibers that were on Chase, which would point to it being Tate. And I loved that. I thought the author was going to leave it a bit open-ended. I had figured out it's Tate. And then at the end, she's like, no, it was the opposite. She made it a closed ending where you absolutely knew who it was. It was a clean ending. You knew who it was. I did not like that at all, at all, at all. I was just so incredibly moved when it was me trying to figure it out. I had finally said, I looked at all the clues, I figured it out, and it makes sense. And then she gives us this ending. It doesn't make any sense, and it just ruins it, especially the relationship between her and Tate. You're saying that she went to her death not telling Tate the truth and that she was living a lie all these years. I don't think so. I don't think that at all. So I did not enjoy the ending at all. I did not enjoy the ending at all. I also think the author should not have taken the story all the way through Kaya's death. Especially, I think this book could have possibly had a sequel, given the reception this book has had, all the hype that it's had. Lots of people love this book and enjoy it, myself included. I would have really looked forward to a sequel, a second act with Kaya and Tate and their adventures. There is a big time gap between the end of the trial, Tate and Kaya getting back together, and then subsequently Kaya's death. The author could squeeze a sequel into that. I don't know. Leave me a comment below if you've heard anything about a sequel or if the author is considering a sequel, because I really enjoy it. Also, let me know if this author has any other upcoming books in the works, because I would really, really like to read her other novels. I felt like the prose was beautifully written. The author has a background in nature. I believe she has a PhD in some type of animal behavior or animal studies. It really translated well her love of nature into this book. I really enjoyed it. It would have been a 5-star book except for that ending, which made it, in my opinion, 4 stars. I would love to read more from what this author puts out, especially if this is her debut novel. I would love to see her subsequent works if this is her first try. I can only imagine what her subsequent works will be. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. If you believe that books create ideas and ideas change the world and want to change the world one book at a time, please make sure you're subscribed to my channel. I'm Lisa of Troy. Peace.